This meeting is being held in compliance with the Brown Act. SCAG offices are open for members of the public to attend and participate in person. Instructions for providing public comment have been provided in advance and are also included in the agenda packet. Members of the public participating remotely should ensure their microphone is muted when not in use. Any member of the public calling into this meeting by telephone can press *6 to mute and unmute. All telephone participants should identify themselves prior to speaking. SCAG encourages all members of the public to participate in its meetings. We are committed to holding meetings accessible to people with disabilities. For members of the public requiring ADA accommodation, please call 213-630-1410. SCAG offers free interpretation services for members of the public needing information in another language. Please call 213-236-1895.
Everyone, and good afternoon.
The meeting will now begin.
So
So to ensure that we have a quorum of members present, please insert your smart cards and your communicator keypad. So the meeting of the Regional Council is now called to order. I just want to make sure that we have a quorum.
Madam President, we do have a quorum.
Awesome. I'm going to ask Honorable Steve Manos to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Honorable President Allen. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise and join me in pledging allegiance to the greatest flag on God's green earth? Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Best plays ever.
Okay, I will now open the public comment period of the meeting. And do we have have we received any written public comment?
Good afternoon, Madam President. No, we have not.
Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak?
No, we do not, Madam President.
Okay, that means that I will close the public comment period for matters not listed on the agenda.
Madam President, may I make a housekeeping announcement, please?
Sure.
So pursuant to the rules of the Brown Act, a member of the Regional Council can participate remotely under an ADA accommodation, that is the Americans with Disabilities Act. One of your members is participating in that manner today. It is Mayor Frank Navarro from the city of Colton. In compliance with the Brown Act and the applicable rules, Mayor Navarro will, and I see that he does have his video and activated. And so just for your information, Madam Mayor, Madam President, thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Does anyone wish to pull or reprioritize any agenda items? Okay, not seeing any hands. We're going to move to our chair's report. So I'm going to call on the Honorable David Shapiro, and he will give his report from the Community Economy and Human Development Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. Today, the CHD Policy Committee heard two informational items. First, the committee heard from Eduardo Santana, the Chief Communications Officer of Impact Housing, who shared information on factory-built housing and how this strategy can deliver high-quality, attainable housing through a scalable, modular development model. Next, we heard from Jennifer Lilly, the Director of Community and Economic Development for the City of Riverside, who provided a presentation on how placemaking can support local economic development efforts. Placemaking is a complementary strategy to the traditional infrastructure investment and business development programs, and the presentation explored efforts taken in the City of Riverside to advance placemaking and economic development. Lastly, the CHD committee welcomed a new committee member and here today at the Regional Council, Jesse Zwick of City of Santa Monica. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now I'm going to call on the Energy and Environment Committee Chair, the Honorable Rick Dennison.
Madam President, he's in the restroom.
Okay.
He'll be right back out.
Okay. Great.
I got his back.
All right, so let's go to the Transportation Committee then, and we'll go back. The Honorable Mike Judge.
Thank you, Madam President. The Transportation Committee heard 4 short presentations today from staff and stakeholder and partner agencies. These items are critical programs which SCAG supports and facilitates on behalf of our membership to continue to meet the goals of our regional plan, Connect SoCal, by funding numerous mobility projects and study efforts throughout the region. Mrs. DiCamillo from the Southern California Regional Director from the California High-Speed Rail Authority provided an update on the High-Speed Rails project. The committee took the opportunity to have a lengthy and robust discussion about that. Environmental considerations and ongoing federal implications affecting the state's high-speed rail program. To complement the discussion, we heard from Brightline West Vice President of Governmental Affairs, Asha Jones, Brightline West was much better received. What can I say? SCAG staff provided project update on two efforts which have been concluded. The SCP Smart Cities and Mobility Innovations Program conclusion and the Southern California Zero Emissions Truck Infrastructure. Guess one which was better received. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. What we'll do is we'll come back then to the Honorable Rick Dennison's report. Let's go to action item number 1, approval amendment number 4 to Executive Director's Employment Agreement. And I'm going to turn that over to our Board Counsel, Ruben Duran.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon again. Before you for your consideration is amendment number 4 to Mr. Comey's employment agreement. That amendment came before the Executive Administrative Committee as the result of a positive performance evaluation conducted by that committee of Mr. Comey in April of 2025. All of this in accordance with his employment agreement and SCAG's bylaws. The EAC has unanimously recommended that the agreement be amended in the following manner. First, to adjust Mr. Comey's base salary to a total of $413,133 annually, representing a 3% merit increase plus a 2% cost of living adjustment. And Section 306, which is benefits, would be amended as noted in the staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions that the members of the RC may have.
Okay. Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak on item number 1?
None, Madam President.
Okay, then I will entertain any comment from the members of the RC. All right, so moved and second.
So just for the record, I have the first motion by Supervisor Kurt Hagman and seconded by First Vice President Ray Marquez.
Okay.
And I'll proceed to start the voting, Madam President.
Yes. And I would just remind you that in your communicator keypad, using your smart card and selecting 1 for yes, 2 for no, and 3 for abstention.
And Madam President, I'll also check to see how the Honorable Frank Navarro votes for this item, if he can be unmuted by AV.
My vote is yes, Maggie. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I'll proceed to close the vote, Madam President. And the motion for item 1, including Honorable Frank Navarro's vote, is 40 votes yes, 0 votes no, and 0 abstentions.
Thank you very much. So we're going to go back to the chair's report, and I'm going to turn this back over to Honorable Mike Judge from the Transportation Committee. I'm sorry, Rick Dennison.
Thank you very much.
Your mic's not on.
He's my vice chair.
Your mic. There it is.
Obviously, we had a good meeting in there. We all seem to get along pretty well in the EEC with the new chair and vice chair. So just to keep it brief, thank you for waiting for me to return. Today at the EEC, we had 3 information items. The first, the item was an update on the progress being made advancing Connect SoCal 2024 implementation strategies. And staff also discussed the state's acceptance of the Sustainable Community Strategy for SB 375 and target update process. And for our last item, we received a briefing on the Water Action Resolution White Paper, which includes a summary of current and emergency issues that affect regional water resilience and potential strategies to address them. This also included a panel discussion on the water management challenges stemming from wildfire impacts and the best practices to address them. It featured representatives from the Montego Niagara Water District, Heal the Bay, and the San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District. And I will say our panelists covered a lot of really good items, particularly dealing with water management, sustainability, and also wild and urban interface development and some of the challenges those are creating, the difficulty of some of the managing the water systems in our areas. They covered quite a bit on the strategies to help us. They also talked about lessons learned around emergency and preparedness, and also the partnerships that we have to continue to create to make these systems work correctly for us, for safety in our infrastructure. And that was it today. So thank you.
Thank you for your report. Okay, so now we're going to go to item number 2, resolution number 256741, resilience recommendation and next steps. So I'm going to turn this over to Elizabeth Carvajal, Deputy Director, to present this item.
Thank you, President Allen. Good afternoon, members. The action before you is a recommendation that the Regional Council approves resolution number 25-674-1 to advance SCAG's regional resilience recommendations for planning for resilient communities. Following the Eaton Palisades fires and under the leadership of immediate past President Hagman, the Regional Council, and our policy committees, we convened a series of discussions between February and April to build awareness and expand our collective understanding of how to best plan for and build resilient communities. Based on our learnings from our convenings, the resolution before you includes 8 activities for SCAG to pursue. First, we confirm our commitment to plan for and build resilient communities as an imperative that is core to our role in supporting jurisdictions in realizing the goals and vision of Connect SoCal. We will continue to advocate for dedicated resources at the state and federal level to support our region to access what we need to do this critical work. We will leverage existing planning resources and pursue new ones to help our communities plan, prepare, and recover. One such resource is our Resilience Toolkit, which you'll hear more about later today. We will develop tax increment financing resources, in particular around EIFDs, or Enhanced Infrastructure Financing Districts, and Climate Resilience Districts, to support jurisdictions in their planning and building of resilient communities and taking steps to tackle the impacts of insurance on housing. We will take learnings from our regional utility supporting housing program to support infrastructure planning and investments that are critical to meeting our goals with a climate and resilience lens. We will explore opportunities to support transportation system vulnerabilities assessments that can lead to more resilient infrastructure. We will continue to collaborate with the Los Angeles County Office of Emergency Management and identify potential resources to support rebuilding and recovery. And finally, we will report back with an assessment of progress and potential refinements in early 2026. This concludes my overview of the resolution. I'd be happy to take any questions you may have for me.
Thank you very much. Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak on item number 2?
We've not received any speaker cards, Madam President.
Okay, then I will entertain any comments or questions from the RC.
Shapiro moved the item.
All right. Okay, I have who moved that?
Shapiro.
Shapiro, okay. Second by Kirk Hadman. Okay, then I will go ahead and I'll ask you to open up the voting.
And just for the members, if you still see your previous vote, please press X to clear your devices, and I'll proceed to start the vote now. And Mayor Navarro, how do you vote on item number 2?
Yes.
Thank you. Give it a few more seconds, Madam President. I'll proceed to stop the vote. And the motion for item 2 passes with 40 votes yes. That's including Mayor Navarro's vote, 0 votes no, and 0 abstentions.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to pull any item or reprioritize any item? Okay, seeing anything? Okay, any members of the public wish to comment on anything from the consent calendar?
None, Madam President.
All right. Any questions or comments from the RC on the consent calendar?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Mr. Navarro's hand is up. So do you have a question?
I wanted to move the item, but That's okay.
Thank you.
So just to confirm for the record, I see that it was Bucknam who made the motion and seconded by believe Ramos. Thank you.
All right.
And again, members, if you do see the last vote, please press X to clear your devices, and I'll proceed to start the vote. And Mayor Navarro, how do you vote on the consent calendar?
I vote yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Give it a few more seconds. I'll proceed to stop the vote now. And the motion for the consent calendar passes with 38 votes, that's including Mayor Navarro's vote, 0 votes no, and 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to move along to the information items, the Resilience Toolkit overview and panel discussion. And I'm going to turn this over to Sarah Jimson, our Chief Planning Officer, to introduce the item.
Thank you, President Allen. Following on the adoption of the resilience resolution today, we wanted to spend a little bit more time diving into one of the first resources that we will be releasing in support of the RC's enhanced commitment to support our local agencies, and that is to talk a bit more about our resilience toolkit. Over the course of the last several months, we've heard in presentations across our various policy committees about the importance of being prepared, starting with that call to action that we received from Lucy Jones, who had said that we needed to be prepared for exponential growth in disasters, which is worse than we as linear thinkers can even imagine. We also heard over the last several months from various agencies, several of whom have experienced catastrophic events, about what being prepared looks like, and the tools that they are now applying in their communities to mitigate the impacts in the future. Our hope is that this resilience toolkit gives all of our cities a place to start or advance upon their path to becoming more resilient. So for today's presentation, we're going to begin with a presentation from Ryan Wolf, who's our department manager at SCAG on sustainable and resilient development. And he's going to orient you to the tool and this forthcoming resource that will be available to your cities. And then we're going to hear from 2 of the agencies that are featured in the case studies of our toolkit about their experience strengthening their communities and their infrastructure in order to be more resilient to hazards. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the speakers now as well before I hand it off to Ryan. So first we have with us Lisa Colicchio, who's the Director of Sustainability at Metrolink. As a Sustainability Director for Metrolink, the 3rd largest regional rail service in the nation, Lisa is leading the path to a more sustainable and resilient system through her work leading the development of the agency's 2030 Climate Action Plan and advancing its Climate Vulnerability Assessment and Adaptation Plan, or the CVA. The CVA evaluates future climate change and extreme weather events, event vulnerabilities, a variety of strategies to address them, and provides a roadmap for implementation. After we hear from Lisa, we will hear from Mason Thurman, who's the programs manager for the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council. Mason oversees wildlife prevention programs, including community outreach and education, home wildlife assessments, chipping services, fuels reduction, the resident grant program, and much more. She has served as the coordinator of the Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative since January 2023, and was previously a coordinator with a partner agency, the Ventura County Resource Conservation District. In her tenure at the district, she secured multiple wildfire prevention grants for countywide efforts and hosted the California Wildlife Conference in 2023. Prior to her work in wildfire locally, she served as an inaugural California Climate Action Corps Fellow in the California Fire Safe Council in 2021, developing methods for evaluating social and wildlife vulnerability. So we're pleased to have all of the presenters here today to speak to us on the topic, and hopefully encourage you to all engage with our tool once it is released. Before I hand it off to Ryan, I did want to give a big thanks to Elizabeth and Ryan and Sebastian and our whole planning team, as well as the agency as well, for really pivoting our work over the last couple of months in response to the fires. And I want to appreciate the work of our committees as well, and the chairs who we've worked with to reframe the conversations in response to the catastrophes. I want to again thank them for all the work that has been done. I think it helps make our tools more actionable to support that work that needs to be happening in our communities. And with that, I will hand it off to Ryan to speak a bit more about the toolkit.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ryan Wolf. Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction of this item. So today I'm going to go over the Resilience Toolkit, which we're targeting for release later this summer. So before we get into what the contents of it will be, I just wanted to talk a little bit about why SCAG is doing this and why it's important. So of course, as we are all well aware, Southern California has long been subject to a variety of sudden events, which we call shocks, that have major impacts on our communities. And many of these are also being exacerbated by climate change. So this includes wildfires, flooding, extreme heat, mudslides. And on the other side of this, we have stressors, which are these underlying conditions, which really can amplify the impacts of disasters as they move forward. So when we're looking at this resilience toolkit, we want to see it as an opportunity to go ahead and prepare and anticipate for these events, reduce their impacts, and as noted here, investing in both planning and implementation for resilience really has a direct payoff in terms of reducing damages. And even beyond that, it really makes our communities much more healthy and prosperous places across the board and through all our various systems. So SCAG has been working to integrate resilience into its Connect SoCal plan, as well as its broader suite of programs for several years now. This is our resilience definition. At its core, it's really about anticipating and responding to any shocks and stressors that our region can expect to experience now, as well as into the future, with really the objective of increasing resilience and also making a much more thriving region. We look at resilience very broadly in terms of multiple systems, the built environment, our social systems, our economic systems, and our natural systems. All of these feed into each other, they're interrelated, and so we want to look at resilience more holistically. So the toolkit itself is really designed to be a broadly accessible tool. It's designed to be flexible and scalable, recognizing that we have both small to medium to large cities in our region, and we have cities with various levels of capacity in terms of staffing, resources, technical expertise. And so a really helpful toolkit and a resource needs to be able to meet each of those types of cities and configurations of cities where they are to be accessible and useful. It also is really designed to engender local action as well as support regional focus as well. And then from an agency staff perspective, which is really the core audience, is ensuring that whether you're a hardcore sustainability and resilience planner, and that's what you dedicate your professional life to, or you're a public works employee or a general planner, that you should be able to look into this toolkit, understand it, and apply it to your work. So in terms of what's inside, there's a variety of resources. There's tools, guidance, and case studies. And then in each of these boxes, you can really see that these are the objectives we're trying to achieve with this. So on the planning side of things, cities may be looking at what are their vulnerabilities to various shocks and stressors. What is resilience mean for them? What types of goals do they need to set? What types of strategies do they need to go ahead and push themselves towards those goals? And then once they establish those and implement those strategies, how can they monitor and adjust as needed to move forward? Part of this as well is how can we do engagement and collaboration, as you'll see with both of the panelists to come who are profiled and who be profiled in the toolkit, that there's collaborative methods that can achieve success. There's technical approaches, all of these things, but partnerships and engagement are really critical. As well, we all know that funding and financing is critical. We really can't do any of our work without that. And so the toolkit will also get into that. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is to help cities and jurisdictions prepare and adapt for shocks and stressors, and if needed, recover from them. So as I mentioned, cities are starting, or they're in the midst of their own pathways. And so typically there's really two pathways here. The cities who are embarking on their standalone resilience plans, these climate action plans, climate adaptation plans, these kind of establish an umbrella framework for cities to filter through into their various planning documents and their implementation efforts resilience. But at the same time, many other cities, in fact, probably more, that are maybe have less capacity, less resources, are looking at opportunities. How can they integrate resilience into these individual plans, such as mobility plans, active transportation plans, general plans? And so the toolkit is really designed to meet cities where they are, so that whatever their capacity and expertise is, they can take advantage of it. Of course, community engagements and partnerships are really critical. We know that, we of course need the technical resources. We need that technical expertise in the analysis. At the same time, there's always gaps in data and research. And so the toolkit will lift up how lived experience and partnerships and engagement with community can supplement, augment, or fill gaps in that technical knowledge to really push forward the planning paradigm. Similarly, in the middle of this process, those engagement and partnerships will advance planning and they will advance implementation, so that the reducing impacts of potential disasters. And then if they do happen, it can lead to quicker recovery and more long-term resilience. And then finally, just noting that resilience is certainly critical, but resilience also really generally improves prosperity, economic, social systems. And so it's not just about responding to disasters, it's about reducing vulnerability and improving prosperity across the board. So of course, as I mentioned, paying for it is critical. The toolkit includes both existing and emerging tools and resources. Of course, these range from grants. Elizabeth mentioned earlier, Climate Resilience District, EIFDs. It'll look into all these various funding sources, but it'll also go broader than that in terms of looking how can you craft a comprehensive funding strategy that can really be effective. So for example, when you look at grants are extremely critical, but they have their limitations. They have finite time limits. They have limited eligibilities. And then ultimately, when you expend that funding, where do you go from there? So how can you pair that with more flexible ongoing sources to build on those grant funding and also make yourself more competitive for them? So the toolkit will get into each of that. So with that, really, what can local governments do with this toolkit? SCAG, we're a regional organization. This is our intent to really support action at the local level. Local action provides the most direct benefits to our communities. It also is the foundation for regional action. And then at a regional level, of course, many of our systems, whether they be transportation, natural systems, our economy, they don't respect jurisdictional boundaries. And so how can we approach this from a multi-jurisdictional perspective? So as I mentioned, we're targeting release of this later this summer, but this is not an endpoint. This toolkit is meant to be iterative, as are all of our resilience offerings. And so once we roll it out, we're of course going to do things like hold a webinar so that staff from various cities or you yourself can attend and understand what is involved in it. But we also intend to connect directly with cities to guide them through this so that they can use it in their own resilience efforts, as well as identify where we can improve this, because it's meant to be a living toolkit. So with that, we'll keep plugging away on this toolkit, but I want to go ahead and transition into our two panelists. As I mentioned, they are going to be profiled in some of the case studies in here, where we've really tried to not just lift up the best practices, but tangible real world examples of how various partnerships, collaborations, and agencies are advancing this work.
Actually right now, I'm going to go ahead and take questions before we transition, and we'll turn it over to the Honorable Kirk Hagman.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a quick commentary, since I've been representing this body and a couple other bodies on some high-level talks about resilience finance districts. So basically, talking with insurance agencies, it's basically they're looking, individual house is not what they're looking at when you get that you're in a high fire danger zone or a high risk zone. They're looking at neighborhoods. It's actually the outer rim of those neighborhoods that go. And the beginning premise is what has really changed the last 50 years besides, I'm not saying climate has nothing to do with it, but it does have everything to do with it. It's really on the maintenance that local government has done on the areas around there. So we started the conversations with some of the insurance companies to how do we fit into that equation? And what they're looking at is consistency. So if we spend as a local government a lot of money to do fire mitigation work, the next year it grows back. That's not consistent. So looking at consistent maintenance for neighborhoods as a whole to be able to combat the rate increases that we're seeing, that our residents are seeing on a regular basis. But they've really emphasized it's not just fire resiliency, but it's also flooding, windstorms, earthquakes. There's a number of things. So it's not a one size fit all, even for your city. It's going to be different for each neighborhood. So the real secret is you can spend a lot of money. And they actually brought up several examples of Northern California after the Paradise fires where they spent a lot of money. they didn't get any benefit at all for the residents. So as us as elected leaders to go to our residents and say, you need to get a tax increase on your property tax for every year to do this, it's really key for us to work with the insurance community to find out what those trigger points are for that risk. And they don't like to share that. So it's going to be difficult going forward. But there are some third-party modelers out there. Some universities been working with these larger national groups to really give you a better indication what that may be. And it's going to change over time. So the first 3 years, maybe tree trimming and working on that wildlife growth around your neighborhoods. Then 5 years later, maybe let's start a new roof program for the most vulnerable houses in the perimeter of your neighborhoods. So that flexibility in these resilience finance districts to really respond to what the risk of the year is going to be critical. And so it's a big task for SCAG and for all of us to work together, but hard even for individual community to figure out what that is. But that's the secret sauce that some of these agencies are working with, and SCAG's be a partner with them.
All right, thank you for your comments. I don't see any other cards off, so we'll transition to the next speaker.
Okay, AV, are you working on pulling up the slides here for Lisa? Great. Okay.
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan, for inviting me today to speak and give a high-level overview of Metrolink's Climate Vulnerability Assessment Plan. Oh, twice?
Yeah, it just needs to.
Okay, got it. Thank you. In 2019, Metrolink was awarded a Caltrans grant to conduct a climate vulnerability assessment on our entire system. We kicked off the project in summer 2020 at the height of COVID, and the project concluded in February 2022. The final report was approved by the board, and it's available out on our web pages. These are 4 topic areas that I'll cover today. I'll quickly go through our purpose and considerations. We wanted to identify parts of our network that were most vulnerable to future climate change and extreme weather events. Our track spans across over 550 rail miles throughout Southern California. So any climate event that could happen in the Southern California region, we will experience it somewhere out on our network. We wanted to identify climate adaptation strategies and develop a roadmap for implementation. And we wanted to collaborate with new and existing partners through a stakeholder process that included both resilience and energy management staff. We knew that engaging the stakeholders would be an important component of the project. We had about 20 to 25 people representing 15 organizations, and we met 3 times throughout the project process. And the group included people from member agencies, cities, counties, freight rail networks, as well as NGOs. Approximately 80% of our rail track runs through the backyards of disadvantaged communities. And also increasing grant funding is being earmarked to support socially disadvantaged populations. So we created a custom transit dependency index to highlight disadvantaged communities and low-income communities for whom loss of transit access with respect to climate would be especially harmful. The blue areas on the map show the disadvantaged and low-income communities, and the pink areas is a filter that also include the transit dependent. Here's a deeper dive on social vulnerability, where you can see on the left, the city of Sun Valley ranks at the top with 91% of households, followed then by Baldwin Park and Van Nuys. And then to the right, moving forward, social vulnerable and transit dependent, Lancaster ranks at the top with 44% of households meeting those qualifications, then followed by Glendale and Van Nuys. Performing the climate vulnerability assessment was actually the largest task in this project. And for this, we looked at key asset categories that are all listed on the left-hand side. And we assessed the exposure to climate hazards on the right for mid and end of century projections and climate models. This included extreme precipitation, flooding, sea level rise, storm surge, wildfire, extreme heat, and drought. But we also looked at landslides and earthquakes. We created a series of maps for each of the hazards around the mid-century scenarios, and I'll walk through a sample of some of the findings, but the full set of the maps is available in our entire report that's out on our webpage. So here, extreme heat, it shows track, stations, facilities, and our mountaintop communications. If something is considered high exposure and sensitivity to a hazard, it's noted in red. A low vulnerability is noted in green, and then anything with yellow is a medium risk. Most inland portions of our system are expected to project to have temperatures above 110 degrees annually by mid-century. And then San Gabriel, Redlands, and Paris subdivisions will experience temperatures above 115, which may severely impact both passenger safety and comfort at our stations. Large portions of our system are expected to experience frequent conditions that are going to require a level 2 speed reduction by mid-century. And almost all of our non-coastal regions will be exposed to these extreme temperatures by late century. And I want to give you a real-world example of why this work was so important. It actually is life-saving. September 2021, it was a 110-degree day, and out in Riverside on the track, they were wooden railroad ties, and the engineer could see in the distance the track had become warped because of the extreme heat. Fortunately, he saw that in advance and was able to stop the train because potentially it could have derailed if he wouldn't see that in time. And so a mitigation strategy then is to replace all the wooden ties with concrete so they are permanent in place and will not be subject to these extreme weather events. With respect to wildfire, the vulnerability for us is really restricted to portions of the system that are within wildline areas, and that's Ventura and our valley subdivisions. Assets with the highest vulnerability for us really are mostly our mountaintop communication towers. The majority of our stations and facilities and track do not have high vulnerability for fire because mostly they are surrounded by buffers, and that's parking lots and cleared right-of-ways, et cetera. Major areas of flooding vulnerability are in our Simi Valley, Burbank, Santa Clarita, Redlands, and Paris areas. These track stations and facility assets are already within the 100-year floodplain zones, but these regions are projected to experience an increase in precipitation by mid-century, with potential damage to structures from standing water that could cause service delays or damage to electrical components. Coastal track in Orange County was studied previously before our work by OCTA as part of their OC Rail vulnerability plans. And as you all know and are very familiar, multiple times now, sections of this track are already exposed to overtopping from waves during storm events. But by late century, almost the entire coastal stretch of our Orange subdivision could be exposed to overtopping by storm surges at both stations, that's San Clemente and San Clemente Pier, along the bridges, culverts, signals, and communication equipment. For adaptation strategies, we identified over 100 strategies, which were then categorized into these 4 buckets: governance, informational, structural, and emergency preparedness. Each of our stations was assessed for their climate vulnerability. An asset that received a score of 10 or higher was considered to have high vulnerability. And probably not a big surprise, but extreme heat is the greatest vulnerability for us and the biggest concern system-wide. 14 of our stations were rated as having high vulnerability, and another 29 were rated as having medium vulnerability. Here's an example of an adaptation plan for our stations and some of these actions that could be implemented to help support our riders and keep them more comfortable while waiting on platforms. During our project process, we identified 5 and looked at 5 SCORE projects shown here on the map that could have vulnerabilities to climate. One of the key drivers for us during this project was to be able to update our design and construction criteria and standards to better address vulnerabilities and also implement the findings of our projects into all of our future SCORE projects. One of the most useful tools that came out of our work that's still being used today is an interactive web-based dashboard, and this displays the vulnerability assessment results. It includes the climate hazard maps, as well as asset level exposure and sensitivity to vulnerable ratings. By making this available in a dashboard format, it's easily accessed by our Metrolink staff, the contractors and consultants, and it could be used as a reference when making maintenance, operational, and capital planning decisions. I've included a link to the dashboard, so you'll have this in the future for if you want to access it and take a look around. And then I've put a link to our full report, our CVA adaptation plan, as well as the executive summary that has a direct link to our web pages.
Oops. I think we're going right into the next presentation, AV. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Mason Thurman. I'm the programs manager at the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council, and I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about wildfire planning and collaboration from the perspective of the Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative, which I also coordinate. Thank you, Ryan, very much for the invitation, and thanks to all of you at the Regional Council for having me speak today. Really excited to share some important information with you. All right, so if I could use this clicker, right? There we go. All right, so today we're going to be talking a little bit about the principles of community wildfire mitigation. And I want to just ground us in what those are, very simple, high-level basics, so that you understand the principles that underpin the work we do. Then I'll be talking to you about our Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative, the member agencies, and a little bit about our programming. I'll jump into one of the projects a little bit more deeply, our Community Wildfire Protection Plan, a CWPP for short, give you some highlights from that plan. Then I'm going to talk to you about how we use it. And lastly, I'm going to talk about how I think that you may be able to get involved in the support we need in this space. So firstly, most of us are familiar with defensible space. Defensible space is the practice of thinning the vegetation within 100 feet from the structures. So what you're looking at right now is a fire scar above a community in Westlake Village. And as you can see, the fire scar burns right down to a line where firefighters were able to defend because the vegetation was cleared between the houses and the wildland. So I think this picture provides a really stark image and a really good sell for why defensible space is an important practice. Fuels reduction is similar to defensible space, but it refers to thinning vegetation more so in the wildland. But the goal of both practices are the same, to slow the momentum and intensity of the fire front. The next concept I'm going to talk to you about is home hardening. So what you're looking at right now is a picture from the Insurance Institute of Business and Home Safety. And while it looks kind of like a simulation, it is a simulation of sorts, it happened in real life. So there's a very, very large scale laboratory, and that is a real life size house, but it's enclosed inside of another, I think, 20-something story building where they simulate ember storms. Embers are the leading cause of home loss during wildfires. While during the Palisades in Eaton, we did see a lot of what's called urban conflagration, where one house will ignite, it will then ignite the house next to it through that combustion, and it's kind of a domino effect. Overall, embers are still the leading cause of home loss as long as the IBHS has been researching. Sorry, it's a lot of syllables. So what you can see in this photo, through this long exposure photo, is the density of where embers are the greatest. That's going to be that brightest color yellow. And so you can see where that zone 0 that you probably have heard of as well is coming from. We see embers accumulating primarily at the base of the home, and they kind of form a little bubble around within that 0 to 5 foot zone. So the reason we're concerned with that 0 to 5 foot zone and the structure itself, as you can see, embers are clearly making contact with the structure, is because that's where we're going to see the most ember intrusion. So combustibles within this zone are the most vulnerable to ignition. And once a home ignites, there is a 90% chance of total loss without firefighter intervention. So it's really important that we prevent ignition in the first place. So what we do with home hardening and the science of it is to make the structure ember resistant. I have a few examples there of ways to make a structure more ember resistant. This might be replacing any combustible siding. Wood siding is something that we see less of these days, but still is there, especially within the first 6 inches from the ground. You might be familiar with vent screens. If embers make their way through an attic or a foundation vent, they're probably going to find something on the inside that's very combustible. So if we make the vent screen a little bit smaller, it's going to prevent that ember intrusion. So that's the practice of home hardening. The Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative is really concerned with making, with doing home hardening and defensible space throughout our community, as well as a few other programs. So our programs are listed below. We have home wildfire assessments where we teach about both those principles I just shared with you. We do FireWise USA assistance. That's a community level practice for getting more communities resilient to wildfire. We do fuels and defensible space projects. We also do wildfire planning, which I'll be delving into a little bit more deeply with you today, education and outreach, chipping services. So as you can see by our membership, the logos there, it's a little hard to read, but you have 3 to 4 fire safe councils. Those are all local to Ventura County. You have the County Resource Conservation District as well, our county fire department, and then we have a advisory partner, the wildfire engineering firm Jensen Hughes, to offer some technical expertise. Primarily, we have been funded by CAL FIRE and California Climate Investments. How we operate as a collaborative, we've just formed in 2021, and it was through the application of a CAL FIRE grant. So we're very functional, very operational. One of our member agencies or organizations will apply as the lead agency on a grant, and then all of us will be listed as subcontractors. What's also important for our collaborative to note is that each of these organizations you see as members also have other forms of income, revenue that are being brought in. We don't just have the collaborative grants, and that's really important so that we're able to, write applications together. So we have secured 3 grants so far from both CAL FIRE and the State Coastal Conservancy, and we definitely look forward to being able to continue this work. And so by working as a collaborative, we are able to get much more done throughout the county. One such project that we collaborated on was our Community Wildfire Protection Plan. So on the right, you just see a snapshot of the cover page from the county plan, which was published in 2023. And on the left, you have an overview or an outline of what the plan actually contains. I know there's tons of plans. This plan itself is voluntary, but they are increasing in popularity. So you'll see it is unsurprisingly very wildfire focused. So we have environment, fire history, probability of future risk with regards to wildfire. We have a local community snapshot where we delve into what any specific community might need. And then the section that I find the most useful is our priority action section. So for our Community Wildfire Protection Plan, or CWPP, we identified 5 pillars that we thought were going to be the most important and most applicable for our county. Those included community engagement and education, structural hardening, aka home hardening, which we just talked about, defensible space, fuels reduction, evacuation, and emergency response. So within this priority action section, below each of those pillars, we actually list real life, ongoing, and future projects. And why do we do that? Why is it useful? So right here, you will see a quote. I'll just read the first bullet and you can read the rest by yourself if you're interested. The following are the Ventura Regional Fire Safe Council fuel reduction priorities. Continue to partner with local agencies and groups to conduct fuels reduction projects throughout the county. and so on. So this is just an example of what you would see in that priority action section. Again, beneath that, you would see details about specific ongoing and upcoming projects. This is important because it both influences our programs and our grant applications. So it allows us to help better direct funding that we do have and to secure future funding. And I'll give you an example. So within the ongoing or within the upcoming project list, we were able to refer to our CWPP. We had funding already. We wanted to know what to do with it. And so this is a nice long document with lots of detail that was crafted with an advisory group consisting of a lot of experts in the area. So we know that we can lean on this document and say, okay, we have this little bit of funding. Where should we go do a fuels reduction project? And then conversely, if there's a project we know that we want to do, it aligns with our mission, either as an individual organization or a collaborative, we can use the justification provided in the CWPP, which is often necessary for wildfire mitigation funding streams, and then offer that, as a quote within our application and make it more competitive. So an example of the first one where we leaned on the CWPP to provide us some guidance as to how to spend existing funding. You're seeing photos. And again, I think it's just nice to see a little bit of photos of what it is that we're doing. This is a condo complex in Fillmore with overgrown defensible space zones. So again, it's just that first 100 feet out from the structures. And we were able to provide a community defensible space break. And we leaned on the CWPP to both analyze high wildfire risk and high social vulnerability risk. Where might there be a community that isn't able to get this work done on their own? And so here's one more photo of before and after, which is a little bit more of a stark difference. Awesome. So what role can you play in wildfire planning? More on plans. So while the safety element of general plans and local hazard mitigation plans are mandated, many agencies and nonprofits are now writing community wildfire protection plans and a separate plan, the regional priority plan. And this is to qualify for common wildfire mitigation funding streams, namely CAL FIRE, U.S. Forest Service, and the California Department of Conservation. Like I said, our collaborative is 100% grant funded, so it's really important for us to keep up with what these grantors want to see, and for good reason, right? It's important for us to plan ahead and use expert opinion to guide what it is that we should be doing in the county. So the support I see that's needed, and there's probably many, many more opportunities for support that you might be privy to. The first one is going to be insights, direction, and communication regarding expansion in the wildland-urban interface. That is something that is probably not going to stop anytime soon. And so having knowledgeable folks in that space also collaborate on community wildfire protection plans and regional priority plans would be really, really helpful. Alignment with climate resilience goals. So something that we see, especially in Ventura County, sometimes we have a sustainability division or a planning division that wants to see, mulch used for drought resilience because it has many climate benefits. Or there are urban greening projects where, trees should be planted to provide shade, just like Lisa was talking about in her presentation. But what's important is for wildfire risk is the placement of those items, mulch and trees. And so aligning wildfire resilience goals with climate resilience goals is really important. Also because the megafires that we are experiencing are very damaging to the climate. They release tons and tons of carbon dioxide, right? So by aligning wildfire prevention goals with climate resilience goals, it's kind of a win-win in that situation. Consistency with fire agencies and code and permitting requirements. There's also the opportunity to influence and educate the public on residential and community solutions. Some different agencies have a little bit more pull or legitimacy, respect from the public. And so it's important for us to collaborate together to reach a greater and wider sector of the public and get them engaged. And maybe there's more that you can think of too. Oh, lastly, here are some resources. I think this will be linked with in that in your packet for all of you if you would like to explore any of them further. The one I want to call out is the Board of Forestry Zone Zero Hub. You might already be familiar. I didn't have the time to speak on it today, but there are some important Zone Zero changes coming, and this is where we're going to see them come out the soonest. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for this informative presentation. Is there anything else?
Well, we were going to see in the room if there's any questions. I just wanted to also, well, we'll start then with Wendy.
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Just really quick. So we, I don't know if other cities are experiencing this, but we had held a town hall, and we do have a lot of city area that is wildland designated. And with the recent change in the fire maps, we've gotten a bit of an uproar from our residents about some of those areas. So one of the things that we're facing in mitigating the wildfire is also protecting the species, and and there seems to be some I guess the circular reference in policy where we're trying to get it cleaned up. It's taken over a year to get through processes. Do you have any guidance in that area? Because that seems to be the biggest delay, because the fire doesn't wait for the species to finish nesting.
Just a quick follow-up to your question. Are you referring to maybe like CEQA requirements, CalVTP
Yes,
things?
all those things.
Okay,
all the alphabet soups. Yes.
Wonderful. I wish that I had more guidance. I suppose I can try to speak to it. There are some pathways that we've experienced that are a little bit easier to go through with regards to environmental impact reports. And something that's also important to note too is that depending on who is paying for the work, right? If there's state funds that are paying for the work, then an organization like myself does have to go through CEQA. But if the residence or property is privately owned and the owner wants to do work on their property, they would not have to go through the environmental impact reports.
So
in my understanding.
So there's a lot of open space that's owned by homeowners associations, and they do. That's private.
Thank you for the information. I don't think I can be of much help there.
All right, Honorable Jenny Crosswhite.
Yes, thank you both for your really informative presentations. I was wondering if collaboration is implied in everything that's been talked about, but can both of you speak to how you partner with local agencies, cities, private and public entities, and nonprofit partners in doing your work, and what impact those partnerships have on reaching your goals?
Sure, that's a good question. I'll take that first. For Metrolink, through our climate vulnerability assessment, we actually had a consultant that led us through the whole project, and it was ACOM. And so they were, very instrumental, because they had been down this path and had done many climate vulnerability assessments before, including LA Metros. So they were the ones that helped us navigate, gathering the right stakeholders, and we worked closely with all of our teams internally, operations, emergency management, all of those teams. We gathered them, and they were part of internal stakeholders that were part of the process as well. So we really were guided by our consultant who had the experience and led us through this.
For the Ventura County Wildfire Collaborative, we kind of have the opposite experience, I would say. So the fire safe councils that you saw their logos listed, we have 4 fire safe councils in our membership. Those are all grassroots nonprofit organizations. Ours is a full operation now. We have 9 staff, but many of the other organizations are completely volunteer run. So we see those as being, that is the community. And we definitely rely on relationships between, ourselves, those community leaders, and we work with to find local community leaders. We have, communities within our jurisdiction that we might experience language barriers. And so we, seek out organizations like Promotores y Promotoras, and they are kind of our conduit. And I think what's also important for us is building in budget to do to our community partners to help us increase outreach. So we make sure that if we are kind of outsourcing any type of labor for getting more community partners involved, we're paying them for that work, because it can be a lot of work, and we want to be able to scale up those relationships. So I guess the principle is like finding trusted community leaders that already exist instead of creating new ones for that like kind of more public facing partnership. And then in terms of agency partnerships and other nonprofits, we have it. I guess it has taken a while to build relationships, but we are definitely fortunate to have good relationships with the local fire agencies. And I think part of that is the approach in being really willing to be collaborative and deferential and take their lead. I think that that's an important role that we play as a fire safe council and a wildfire collaborative. We are not necessarily always going to be the experts in the room. We're just the ones that are often willing to help and make things happen. And so knowing who to turn to and ask those important questions has been helpful to forming our partnerships. And as the collaborative, we would definitely not be anywhere if it wasn't for the partnerships. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the RC? Do we have any online? Okay, do we have anyone that wishes from the public to make any comments on item number 12? That's it. Okay, well, thank you very much, ladies.
Yeah, and I can just close out and want to thank our speakers here today. Again, these are 2 case studies that are going to be included in our resilience toolkit. And I think what you can see from their presentations that, resilience planning is going to look very different depending on where you are in our region, the type of assets you have, and the types of vulnerabilities you face. So I do appreciate the complexity of this work and also want to appreciate the work that our elected officials have been doing to get us more resources to do these types of analyses and the work that needs to be done in the community. It's been a big priority of our legislative team as we've been in Sacramento and DC. This is just a whole new body of work. I think that we're, looking at our cities and local communities to take on. So continuing to call out the need for it and the value of the dollar that you put into prevention, I think is going to be really important for us here at SCAG. So hope you all will take a look at our toolkit. We will make sure to promote it, and you can get it out to your city managers and other folks in your cities who can help advance those practices in your communities. So thanks for the time today, and thanks to our speakers.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Okay, with that, we're going to move to Javier Cartagena, who is our Chief Government and Public Affairs Officer, to present a legislative update.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Madam President, members of the Regional Council. It is my pleasure to provide you with this month's legislative update, starting off with Sacramento. The Senate and Assembly are in the midst of their floor session as they rush to meet actually tomorrow's House of Origin deadline. And the committees may resume meeting Monday, June 9th to continue their work on the budget bill, which has to be passed by midnight on June 15th. And in speaking of the budget, Governor Newsom released his May budget revision on May 14th as an update to his January budget proposal, considering updated revenue and cost projections, as you may have been hearing on the news. Overall, the governor presented a balanced budget totaling almost $322 billion, of which $226.4 billion is from general fund sources. The May revision also addresses a nearly $12 billion shortfall by making modifications to the Medi-Cal program, shifting CAL FIRE funding from the general fund to the greenhouse gas reduction fund, and several other smaller reductions, while also borrowing from special funds to address the remaining deficit. Thankfully, and for now, the governor still proposes maintaining the transportation budget, which had been a SCAG priority during our Sacramento summit. And the governor still proposes to establish a new California Housing and Homelessness Agency, or CHHA. I know there's been a lot of chatter on this. The governor's proposal did not include any new funding for the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Program, that's the HAP, which has been a priority for counties and big city mayors. This is a coalition led by our very own Mayor Locke Dawson. And if you don't see her today, it's because she is at a press conference on this very issue right now. In addition, the May revision did not include any new funding for transit agencies. This had been a push by Senators Scott Wiener and Jesse Aragon, who had requested about $2 billion in state funding for public transit to be allocated over the next 2 years. While the May revision did not include any new major additions or cuts to housing, it does propose clawing back about $31 million in unused funds from a handful of housing programs. The governor also expressed support for the legislature's pending $10 billion housing bond and for the extension of the cap and trade program, which he proposes renaming to Cap and Invest until 2045. So as part of the cap and trade negotiations and extensions, the governor announced that he will work with the legislature to create an expenditure plan, but it emphasized the need to provide about $1 billion annually for high-speed rail project, which currently receives 25% of all cap and trade revenues. This is a conversation that SCAG and other transportation, air quality, housing stakeholders, labor will be paying particular attention to. The concern is that if the governor takes $1 billion for CAL FIRE and another $1 billion for high-speed rail, there may not be enough cap and trade resources available for other priority programs in the region. Moving on to Washington, D.C., as you may have heard at EAC, and I believe President Allen will report on this, we went just a couple weeks ago, and we met with about 18 members of Congress and their staff. This was a very critical week as reconciliation negotiations were happening. It was the building was buzzing in excitement, and there was a lot of people there. On our last day in DC, the bill passed by a vote of 215 to 214, and wanted to highlight some of what the bill included, which was the preservation of the tax exemption for municipal bonds, $1.6 billion for local and state preparation for the 2026 World Cup and 2028 Olympic and Paralympic Games. This is to be distributed through FEMA's State and Homeland Security Grant Program. It's going to be addressing security issues. Also, an increase in state and local tax deduction cap from $10,000 to $40,000. As I mentioned last month, the bill also proposed an annual registration fee of $250 on electric vehicles and another $100 on hybrid vehicles to ensure that these vehicles pay into the Highway Trust Fund. And speaking of electric vehicles, the bill also includes cuts to the consumer tax credit for new electric vehicles worth up to $7,500, which could be completely phased out by 2026. And meanwhile, the tax credit for used vehicles created under IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, would be outright eliminated by 2025. The bill is now with the Senate, where several changes are expected to ensure compliance with the Senate priorities and rules. And any changes to the bill will result in the bill going back to the House for final approval. In timing on that, everything needs to be done, or Senate hopes to do so by July 4th. Simultaneously, the Trump administration sent Congress a $9.4 billion rescission package, which proposes to cancel previously funded the National Public Radio, NPR, and PBS, and USAID. Speaker Johnson is planning to vote by the House next week and a Rules Committee vote on Monday, followed by floor action. And just looking at the reconciliation bill, Congress will need to pass a comprehensive budget by the end of the federal fiscal year on September 30th. And as a follow-up to the release of his skinny budget last month, the president submitted a more detailed budget plan to Congress last Friday, as you may have heard. As of note, I wanted to highlight that the administration is proposing a budget of $111.3 billion on top of the $35.8 billion in advance appropriations from the 2021 Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act. So also wanted to note pertaining to SCAG, the administration budget requests a $274.2 billion for the Metropolitan Planning Program nationwide, something that we advocated for our last delegation to Congress. which is approximately 10 million more than the current levels. But I just want to remind you, we have over 400 MPOs across the nation, so that gets all distributed across that. So nominal change. Also of note is the proposal of the administration to cancel the 5.7 billion in funding for the NEVI program. That's the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure program that it was also initiated by the Biden administration. So that was a lot of information. Try to go through that quickly, but that concludes my report for this month. I have my team here to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any members of the public that wish to speak on item 13?
None, Madam President.
Great. Any comments from members of the RC? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to go on to a report from the talented Regional Council member, Lucy Dunn. You could give us our business report.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. My report is on page 155 of your board packet. The GLUE Council, your business advisory group, met this Monday. We kind of changed up the agenda a little bit because we were going to focus on some things that city managers might be looking at this in kind of a volatile economy. But instead, because SCAG leadership is starting to look at SB 375, we thought it would be good to hear from them on some of their ideas. And in fact, Darren Chitsey reminded me that that's how GLUE Council got formed, was way back when 375 was being passed and the business community came out of its chairs on that one. So now looking all these years later, things that we could do to make it maybe work more effectively. I'm going to kind of push my business colleagues to see how we might be able to help SCAG on that regard. In my report, Randall Lewis always gives me some great notes on housing. He happens to be in London. He had dinner last night with the grandson of Churchill and sent me a picture. So he's with the hip and cool. He's touring some housing properties with ULI, and he sends his regards. But he did leave some notes on, from his perspective, the deteriorating housing market. No surprise in, again, a volatile economy, which I commend to your reading. The one thing I wanted to highlight that he mentioned, which I love giving you news you can use, is he really encouraged city and county leaders trying to anticipate the future to look at soft data as much as hard data in their city. Hard data, of course, are lagging indicators, which usually signify what happened in the past, such as home sales, industrial production, employment rates, etc. But some of our soft data can be more reflective of leading indicators, such as consumer confidence, who's thinking about hiring, is there an interest in taking vacations, where's tourism? So talk to your local businesses, talk to your nonprofits, residents, ask them, how are they feeling about the future? Get a sense of what's happening in your economy and in your local economy, and then try to figure out how to help them, because they're as baffled as the rest of us are right now in trying to predict the future. One thing that I really wanted to highlight is Kevin Kane from SCAG sent me the link yesterday for the SCAG Economic Roundtable update, which was held on May 22nd. And these are your economic advisors from all of the counties within the SCAG region. You're going to get this link in the post-meeting emails that are sent to you. Please click on it. Really good information in there. And in fact, I kind of giggled when Kevin said, we tried to focus, because the news is such bad news. We wanted to give you some good policy things to think about. And again, married to some of the things I've been saying as well, really help with your local incubators, local permit streamlining, take a look at state insurance market solutions, ensure that community colleges and trade education remain solvent, because these will help maintain capacity in the knowledge economy that's going to be so important when we get into recovery mode. Please God, sooner than later. The one thing I want to also, last thing I want to highlight in this report is that the roundtable unanimously agreed that the largest and clearest policy lever that exists to improve our region's economy is substantial reform of CEQA. And it's even highlighted with chapters in the best-selling book by Ezra Klein, Abundance, which the report actually links you to go buy the book. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. I literally just finished it and I thought it was really terrific. No surprises for all of those of us that have been working in California for years, but well written and some great information and solutions for you to take a look at it. Anyway, that's a lot of my report, Madam Chair, and thank you as well for joining our GLU Council meeting. Thanks to Kurt for his leadership last year. We really appreciate your leadership, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Lucy. Do we have any members of the public that wish to comment?
Madam President.
Okay. Any RC members? Yeah. All right. So I'm going to move on to my report. I want to start by welcoming the following new regional council members. Austin Bishop, RC District 43, Palmdale, and Ulysses Cabrera from RC District 69, Moreno Valley. Welcome. John Dutry, RC District 9, Montclair. And Marcia McLean, RC District 37, Santa Clarita, sorry. Clarita, are you? Yeah, welcome. No, it's just Santa Clarita. Clarita, from Santa Clarita, sorry about that. That's okay. And Mark Warnock from RC District 39, Lomita. And Jesse Zick, which is RC District 41 from Santa Monica. Welcome. Let's give them a round of applause. We look forward to having you. First of all, I want to talk about the General Assembly. So thank you everyone who attended the 2025 Regional Conference and General Assembly last month. We were pleased to celebrate SCAG's 60th anniversary, and special thanks to all of our speakers and panelists who shared their expertise and insights on a very informative event. The 2025 event was one of our biggest in history. We had almost 900 people in attendance. So it was really incredible. Videos and photos from the event are on the SCAG website. I really encourage you to look at those. It was really fun to see all the connections and conversations and just fun that people had. So take a look at that. But I just want to have a special thank you, or say a special thank you to all of the sponsors who made this event possible. The host committee, led by our regional vice president, Ray Marquez, raised an impressive $435,000.
Madam President, thank you. Just want to say our staff, if it wasn't for our staff, Perla, Javiera, Ellen Wapner back for helping me, Lucy Jones, Jan Harnick, Laura Hernandez, we want to raise that money. So thank you for all your hard work. Truly appreciate it. So thank you guys.
And just so you know, that surpassed the goal that he had of 360,000. So you know all the stuff that allowed us to do by surpassing that goal. So thank you so much for your hard work and the staff. The full evaluation report on the event will be shared at the next LCMC meeting. And so the event was just a true success. So thank you for everyone that came and was involved. I'm going to talk about DC Lobby Day. Last month, I was joined by second Vice President Jenny Crosswhite and by Regional Council members Jan Harnick and Thomas Wong in DC to advocate for SCAG's federal legislative priorities. We advocated for dedicated funding for the 2028 Summer Olympics and Paralympic Games and support for Southern California's wildfire recovery efforts, as well as support for SCAG's priorities and the surface transportation reauthorization. We are in DC at a critical time during reconciliation negotiations. Members of SCAG's congressional delegation and their staff were actually very receptive to our ask and thanked us for all of our work. And I tell you, 13 meetings were incredible. I really do have to give kudos to the staff to set up all those meetings, and most of the meetings were with members, and so it was great. You all worked hard, and it was just a fantastic effort by everyone. And our trip wrapped up with the annual California Transportation Reception, which SCAG co-hosted with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and was attended by nearly 200 of our federal partners and stakeholders across the nation. And nextly, the Latino Action Day, I was joined by Regional Council member Laura Hernandez. Where are you, Laura? Thank you. Good to see you. And staff earlier this month to attend the Latina Action Day on May 6th in Sacramento. At this event, Latinas from around the state engaged with elected officials at the state capitol, advocating for issues important to our communities, access to transportation, housing, and good paying jobs, which are the same issues and priorities that we have here in the SCAG region. So thank you for attending. I tell you, being in that room, powerful, driven, and influential women across California was really inspiration, wasn't it? So thank you so much. All right. Next, regional council meeting schedule. Please note that there will not be any policy committee or regional council meetings in July due to the 4th of July holiday. So I hope you all have a very safe 4th of July holiday. As a result, there will be a special EAC meeting on Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025 at 2 p.m. to address administrative items. And additionally, please note that we will not have EAC policy committees or regional council meetings in August, as it is traditionally a dark month. So hopefully you have some vacations planned. The next meeting of the regional council will be held on Thursday, September 4th at 12:15. And with that ends my president's report. And I am going to turn this over to you, Mr. Comey.
Thank you, Madam President. And I really want to congratulate you on your first meeting. And also want to thank you all for my contract. The best way I can show my appreciation is to continue to let you know that we will continue to work as hard as we can to uplift this region and make this organization the best it can be. If you would just give me a few minutes, because I have a special presentation at the end that I hope you all are part of. My quick comments that I just want to share with you, I'm going to go through them real quickly, but I have a quick presentation at the end that I feel like you all want to be a part of. Earlier on last month, we got approval of our, I call it approval, but it's really a concurrence on our SES by the California Air Resources Board. It was a little later than we had anticipated, but we got it anyway. And we're glad to have it because it does allow our region to be eligible for SB1 funding. And if you don't know what that means, the last cycle, that was a little over $1 billion in funding that came to our region as a result of the 2020 SES. So the 2024 SES has a lot riding on it, and we're glad to get it. Now, because of the delay and the issues that we've had, as I think Lucy alluded to, 375 has been around for a few years, and it's in need of a reform. And so we've been working with the Air Resources Board on those reforms as they begin to look at new targets for us to deal with. There's a long story there. The other thing I want to share with you is that we started our work on the transportation demand management activities for the Olympic Games, the Olympic and Paralympic Games. We spent some time this morning at the EAC talking about the games, the work that we're doing at SCAG, the framework for that work, and had a real good debate. That conversation is going to come to the RC in September. And so you'll get a chance to also help channel the work that we're doing, and looking forward to those conversations. Lastly, shut down the office as of May 30th. We shut down our SCAG office in the SBCTA building. It's out of need for space, so we felt like we could consolidate in the Riverside office and still be as effective. It would not change our stance in the Inland Empire. We'll continue to be there to serve all the needs of the folks there. I'm going to ask the president to join me up front to. Oh, he's not here? Oh, man. Okay. So what we were going to do that I was hoping you would be around for is many of you might know Dr. Frank Wen. Frank has worked at SCAG for the last 37 years, and he finally retired. And so it's a real big deal for us, and we're going to celebrate him. We had all kinds of goodies to hand to him, and hopefully have him say a few words so you can appreciate him. But just quickly, Frank has been through all of, I think, what might be the SCAG experience that anybody could document. And I had a chance to work with him the last year of his maybe year or so of his career here at SCAG, and it was a really privilege. It was a real privilege to have him sort of become the convener of all the history of SCAG, because I didn't want to lose that as it worked out. So I wanted him to spend some time in his last days putting that together, and he did some good work on that. And it's really interesting to see where we have been at SCAG. And I think it's a real impressive resume that SCAG brings to the table, because he has helped us set the standard that we have here at SCAG with the successive plans that he's seen. I think he must have worked on every single regional plan that we've had, definitely all the SESs. And one of the things I enjoyed over the last 7, 8 years with Frank was the sense of history he brought to the work that we were doing when we would get into the SESs. So again, I just want to take the opportunity to recognize Frank and hope you help me appreciate him, even though he's not here.
Let's still give him a round.
And with that, if there are any questions, be glad to take it. I didn't realize it wasn't.
Okay. All right. Seeing none. Any future agenda items? Okay, seeing none. What about any announcements? All right. Well, thank you for your, did I miss somebody?